Good evening from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm Dr. Suphachai Suphangul. Right now, I would like to share my experience and in the topic biomaterial and the surgical technique for the success aesthetic implant restoration. As we know right now, the implant dentistry is very popular nowadays. And another issue that we met that every day about the tissue deficiency before we place the implant in, especially on the buccal bone in anterior zone or the aesthetic zone. From the spray 2000, we need at least thickness of the bone on the buccal plate at least 2 millimeter to prevent the recession of the bone and the soft tissue for the long term. In general, we have a 3 zone to achieve the success aesthetic outcome. As we know, pink and white aesthetic score. In that position, we need 3 components. First of all, the tissue foundation. That is a focus for this lecture today. Another zone, soft tissue transitional zone. If you have a good foundation, hard tissue foundation, we can build up the soft tissue transitional zone. And the last one, the dental prosthesis zone. This one is we can achieve aesthetic easier than both area, because this one we can adjust, we can change the crown, we can use another material to match the aesthetic. But however, we need to build up the hard tissue zone and the soft tissue zone first. Such as this example, osseointegration nowadays is very great, successful, but we can get the aesthetic complication more and more and more. If we cannot understand well and we cannot handle hard and soft tissue well. Like this, you can see the recession on the number 2-1 on the buccal side, and the level of the bone is not good because we don't the practitioner don't understand well about soft and hard tissue. Like this case also, the white aesthetic score look really good, but you can see on the right side, they have the recession, both soft and hard tissue. Or like this case, previous dentists try to make it aesthetic with the zirconia abutment or even gold abutment. But however, if we not respect on the biology, we will get the aesthetic complication like this. We have to understand first about the socket dimensional chain after we extract the teeth. This is a table that's from Stephen 2004. They summarize the study about dimensional chain, such as this one, Thorpe in the 2003. You can see the vertical chain, all of the paper is not much, but buccolingual chain is very high, especially in the first 3 to 6 months. This is a histology from around 2005 in the canine model. They did the histology in the canine. After lost the teeth, you can see the dimensional for the vertical height is still okay, because the lingual plate or the palatal plate will keep that dimension, but the buccal plate will recess as the skin dry, and then they will build up the bone over on it and then reorganize the tissue over on. What does it mean? Almost of the cases, we will lose for sure the horizontal bone loss. But in some special case, if a long time, we will get recession on the vertical dimension dimension also. This is a physiology of the socket healing for the Atwood, 1971. You can see when we lost the teeth first, the dimensional on the socket is still keep on. But when the healing, the time pass, this one is an ideal alveolar ridge that we need to place the implant in, that have enough both the horizontal dimension and the vertical dimension. But if we don't do anything, this is the ideal case. The time pass, we will lose the horizontal dimension more and more until the ridge is have a knife edge. After the knife edge period, it will have the severe vertical bone loss, and then bone will lose until the basilar part of the bone. Let's say in this case, this example, in general, at the circle, same with the platform of the implant. In general, we need this circle, but we need the bone support. From the spread 2000, we need 2 millimeter more to support this area. But this one is deficiency. This is the most common for the implant in the heel side, in the aesthetic zone. But we need the bone like this to fill up in this area, to get the bone support for the implant and the support soft tissue in the long-term aesthetic outcome. Like this, when it's multiple teeth and the time pass, like in this case, it's very patient lost a teeth for like 10 years. You can see it have a knife edge on the occlusal view. When we take a look in the frontal view, it have the severe concavity in the frontal area like this. But however, in general, the case like this, we will get the anatomical landmark that can keep the bone graft in place. One, the adjacent teeth, and another one in the center of the face, we get the nasal spine here. That is can keep the horizontal dimension of the bone graft. Like this, I do the bone graft. I will get the more detail in the case example. You can see I use the Allograft mixed to the Xenograft to build up this area. And after that, I can do the osteotomy with the buccal bone support is very well. And then we can place the implant in. First of all, we have to understand first, what is the guide bone regeneration? The guide bone regeneration is a procedure that we regenerate the bone by use the membrane, prevent the soft tissue to the bone tissue regeneration. Because the healing rate between the soft tissue and hard tissue is totally different. The soft tissue have the potential to healing faster than the hard tissue. That's why if you don't have a soft tissue to protect the bone graft, the soft tissue will invade in the bone graft, and we will lose the volume of the bone graft and the quality of the bone graft also. Guide bone regeneration is developed from the guide tissue regeneration by Darwin in the 1988. First, they use a non-resorbable membrane, EPTFE, to create the space and exclude the soft tissue in the space. And then they developed to use this technique for the peri-implant defect first. After that, they got the problem about the membrane is corrupt. That's the loss of the volume and the quality of the regenerate tissue. That's why we have the bone filler, such as in the beginning we used like a autograft and Allograft, and then we developed to use the Xenograft and the synthetic also. For the membrane itself, The first we use the non-resorbable, but after that they have the problem. They got the problem about the dehiscence of the wound. That's why they develop the bioresorbable membrane. It could be the polymer or the natural collagen membrane. For the surgical technique, by the Homle Wang in the 2006, they have the successful GBR as a past principle. First, before the GBR technique, we have to get the primary wound closure with the tension free. Almost of the cases, we can do that success with the buccal advancement fab by periosteum releasing. That is very crucial for every GBR procedure. We have to do the tension-free periosteum releasing. For the spread creation and maintenance, we use two components. First, we use the membrane and the bone filler to keep the space for the bone regeneration. The third one is the angiogenesis. It has the two parts. First, adequate blood supply. The blood supply is from the flap. I already decided the flap is wider than the defect, at least one tooth both sides. I will show you later on in the case. And another one that's increased angiogenesis is interbone narrow penetration. Because of almost of the bone is a cortex, we have to penetrate to get it breathing and induce the blood to the bone graft from the recipient side. Another one, stability of the wound and the implant. In case that we do the implant simultaneous with the GBR, the implant supposed to get the primary stability at least 25 to 35 Newton centimeter for the insertion torque. And after we closure the wound, the most important, the prosthesis, we have to check the prosthesis not contact to the wound. Otherwise, it can cause to be the wound is breakdown or dehiscence later on. For the modern bone formation, we need like this triangle. First is our scaffold. Scaffold, that means the membrane, the bone metric. The second one is the cell. The cell is from the recipient side, osteoblast, endothelium cell, and the bone, the signal molecule. These three components, they work together like a cell build up before they build up the bone. First as all, they induce to get the angiogenesis, and then osteoclast will destroy the scaffold and build up the new bone by osteoblast. They have the signal molecule communicate each other and synchronize the process together. But however, in the middle, you need the time and the blood supply also. It's good luck for the oral area. We have the blood supply is plenty. That is not big problem for the oral surgery. But we have to design the flap very well. For the time, at least in my experience, I always wait to 6 to 8 months if I do the big guide bone regeneration, because I would like the bone mature, very mature, that can support the bone graft. Okay, let's understand the bone graft material first. The bone graft material, they have this word, osteogenetic, osteoinductive, osteoconductive, and osseointegration, and the bioactivity. Osteogenesis, that means it refers the material itself have the potential to regenerate the bone. Only type that can get the osteogenetic property is autograft that we can harvest to to the patient in the oral cavity, such as ramus, chin, or tuberosity. For the bioactivity, it's a form cellular view. The cellular view attach and differentiate the osteogenic cell on the biomaterial. For the osteoinduction is will induce the cell osteoprogenitor cell around the graft area, and then will differentiate to be the osteoblast. For the osteoinduction, in nowadays case is referred to like a BMP2 bone morphology protein, or some induces protein like that. But almost of the cases, almost of the graft material, they have the osteoconduction. That means the bone graft itself is a scaffold for the osteoblast and osteoclast working on it and build up the new bone, regenerate a new bone on the bone graft. For the osseointegration, this one is such as a implant, the dental implant. The material can cross connect to the material, or we can say the bone will grow up on the bone graft without a fibrous tissue formation. This always happen on the material such as the Xenograft. I will explain you more. The difference between the bone graft material does have the many issues, but we have to focus in the implant dentistry, we focus on the two issues. First, the resorption. The second one, the volume stability. Because after the bone graft in the aesthetic area, we would like to get the volume to support the implant. That is not, the resorption and the volume stability is not coming the same way. If you have the resorption, well, you lost the volume stability. But if the volume stability is very good, the resorption is very slow. Okay, classification of the bone substitute. First, Allograft, that is a gold standard nowadays, is a patient-owned bone. Does have the all property. They have the cell, they have the scaffold, they have the bone morphology protein in the autograft, but they have a disadvantage because it have the mobility and another area for the surgical, increase the pain and mobility to the patient. That means nowadays we have the choice for the patient, such as the Allograft. Allograft is referred to the tissue in the same species, the human tissue from the bone bank, and they processed and ready to use. And another one that is most popular nowadays is a Xenograft. It's an animal for origin, such as a bovine or cow, equine, horse, or the porcine. Porcine is a pork. Or Alloplast. Alloplast is a synthetic. That's such as the calcium phosphate, ceramic, polymer, or metal also. In the autograft, the human tissue that's I refer to is the good is a optimal genetic structure. They have all of the property, but disadvantage, they have to harvest, increase their mobility, and increase the time, the surgical time. How about the Allograft? The Allograft is very fast because it's come from the bottle. Don't need to harvest from the oral cavity. It's fast and completely naturally modeling. Because of the osteoblast, osteoclast can resolve it and replace that with their own bone. But the problem is Allograft, because the osteoclast can resolve that completely. That's why it will lose some volume after completely remodeling. But the disadvantage of the Allograft is availability in some country, some regulation is not allowed to use the allograft, the price, and because it's need to get from the donor, sometimes it doesn't have enough the donor to get the allograft. How about the most popular one, the Xenograft? The Xenograft itself is a long-term volume stability and have the osteoconductive activity. The bone, because the bone graft, the Xenograft is a crystal that human osteoclast cannot resolve completely. They build up the bone on top of it. But the good thing is it have very good property for the volume stability. The disadvantage is a slow resorption, and they have the potential of the some transmissible disease such as BSE. But I will explain more in the process for the prepare the Xenograft that can destroy the BSE. For the alloplast, they have the property between like an allograft and the Xenograft. They always mix between the beta TCP, beta tricalcium phosphate, and the hydroxyapatite. For the beta TCP is fast resolved and have the bone regeneration, and the HA is a slow resolved, is keep the volume property. Okay, this is the view for the hard tissue in the left side. You see the botiss have the graft that the human bone, and the resolve is a synthetic, and this one is a cerebone that we can refer to the osseointegration. And the soft tissue, they have the variety of the membrane. I will talk about detail more. But it's not the single bone graft material or membrane that's ideal for the all situation. Some situation is good for the Xenograft, some situation is good for the Allograft, or some situation is good for synthetic also. I will explain more in the detail. Let's start with the cerebone is Xenograft, is origin from the bovine, and they process by sintering heat up to 1200 Celsius to eliminate the all organic component, virus and bacteria. And then result of the sintering, the bone graft itself is going to be the natural bone mineral, high histidine. The property, they have the macro porosity. That is good for the rapid vascularization, hydrophilic, can absorb the blood between the macro structure here. And it have the property osteoconduction, the bone formation will grow up in this porous. And the microporosity, this is good like this, is good for the ingrowth of the cell and the blood uptake on this area also. For the nanostructure, when you take a look closely in the high magnificent, the surface itself, they have the roughness also. That is good for the cell adhere on. So that like this, osteoblast can connect and start to growing, and they deposit the mineralized component. After we do the GBR with the Xenograft, we can see from the histology, this black area is a Xenograft, and the purple area, this one is a new bone that is built up on. What does it mean? It means Xenograft itself is not resolved, just the bone, the new bone built up on it. Okay, that is a property that I explained. When you mix to the blood, you can see they absorb the blood is very well. That is very, very crucial property for the bone graft material, because like this, if the blood can go in, that means the bone can grow in where is the bus go on, such as in this histology also. For the next one, the MAC graft. The MAC graft is origin is allograft from the human. They have the process to wash in the chemical property, wet chemical process, to eliminate the organic substance and disinfectant, and then it still keep the natural composition of the structure, as you seen in the electron microscope. The surface, they have the roughness and they have some collagen that can keep on the surface also. But the osteoclast can resolve all of this bone graft and build up. That's why we use the word regenerate for the MAC graft. For the cerebone, we use, or Xenograft, we use the word osseointegration, because they build up on. But in the MAC graft, they resolve and replace with the patient's own bone. This is a process for the chemical process for the MAC graft. And for this research from the Schmidt, you can see if we use the Allograft, all of the residual bone graft is gone after 6 months and replaced with the new bone, with the complete remodeling. But however, because of the replace of the new bone, if you use just only allograft in the big defect, we will lose some volume also. That's why in my experience, I always mix the allograft with the Xenograft to get the regenerate the new bone and get the volume stability from the Xenograft. This graph is show the property of the MAC graft. See the first period, they keep the volume stability and drop down in the regeneration period, and they get the new bone formation. But however, in the real life, if you use just only the allograft, we can get like a 75 to the 80%, not like 100%. For the MAC graft, they have the shape like a granule or the block or the bone ring or the bone builder. That's up to country. Some country can order that. Some country cannot use that because of regulation. The last one, MAC Resorb and the MAC Resorb Inject, is a synthetic type. It's composition between the HA and the beta TCP, between the 60 and the 40, in the ratio 60 and 40. The HA, they have the property to volume stability, but the TCP is resolved and replaced by the bone patient. See, the remodeling is osseous integrates first and then follow with the complete regeneration. This is a process. They have the chemical sludgy and the mix is together. When you take a look closer in the microscope, you can get the TCP mixed and in the HA together. This graph explains the remodeling. HA is really so slowly sorbed and they keep the volume stability. But for the beta TCP is real fast resolve and the space for reduce the space for the regeneration the bone. But you can see after 6 months, the sinus lift, they have the volume stability property is really well. However, they have the hydrophilic property, same the Xenograft also. Okay, let's move to the membrane. The membrane, why we need the barrier membrane? That's I explained previous. Because the barrier they have the function prevent the ingrowth of the soft tissue in the defect and protect the slow bone regeneration. We can classify membrane in the two groups, non-resorbable and resorbable. Today we focus in the resorbable membrane. The organic one, like a biologic collagen, can from many resources, such as the pericardium, dermis, and bilayer. We can modify that, or synthetic. But right now the most popular is biologic collagen, and they have the artificial cross-link process to make it longer. But however, the cross-link process, they use the chemical that can induce inflammation in the healing area. The collagen is very excellent biocompatibility, can resolve by itself. It depends on the structure of the collagen membrane. Okay, let's move on the type. The Jansen fleet and the collagen. This one is just a natural collagen sponge. I use that for the wound protection or the wound dressing, and I use for the socket preservation to protect the bone graft inside the socket like this. Or you can use that in the harvest connective tissue graft to stop the bleeding. In general, the Jansen fleet or collagen is a completely resolved in 2 to 4 weeks. Therefore, this one cannot use for the barrier membrane, just can use for the dressing. This is the structure, it's a sponge like this. And you can see from the histology, after 15 days, they have the resorbable and just a small remnant of the Jansen fleet. That's why we cannot use that for barrier membrane. Let's move to the Colprotect. The Colprotect is made from the porcine dermis. They thick like around 0.5 millimeter, and degrade time is they have the intermediate barrier function around 2 to 3 months. Personally, I use that for the small defect for GBR, or we can use that for after the sinus leaf, use that for the protect the Schneider membrane. This is a SME, the scaffold. You can see the porous that's around the angiogenesis go down, but it's not around the soft tissue growth in the regenerative area. After in the tissue, they have the degradation by the time. Thickness is reduced more and more and more. This is the graph that shows how they work. The first time they have the barrier function, and then it's decreased by time. But in the same time, the bone graft that we put it in, they have the regeneration of the bone graft in the not same direction. The Jansen membrane is a porcine pericardium. By its own structure, because the pericardium is very, very packed of the collagen, you can see it's very thin. It's just like a 0.2 millimeter thick, but by its own structure, it's very dense. That's why it's a long-term barrier function. It's take like 4 to 6 months to have the barrier function. In myself, I use that for the big GBR, or in the some area that we need the long-term regeneration. You can see by electron microscope, the structure is very dense. That's why even it's very thin, but the barrier function is very good. You can see from the histology, in this picture, you can see the Jansen membrane is very thin, and that's why when you open up after you do the GBR, sometimes you can get the particle of the bone because the thinness of the Jansen membrane compared to the BioGuide, because of the soft tissue is can grow in. That's why it's the soft tissue is invade in the some area, but this one you can see the barrier function of the Jansen. For the mucoderm is a porcine dermis. They have the thickness around 1.5 millimeter. We can use that instead of the connective tissue graft or the free gingival graft. And degradation time is longer than Jansen and the Colprotect. We can use that instead of the soft tissue. This is a structure. They have the dense on the top, and this one, the loose one, is for the soft tissue connected on the sponge area. The porous, they have the small porous. There's a support revascularization and the chain that, and the for the healing process, they have the soft tissue creeping from the outside and growth in the mucoderm. This one you can see, you can use that for instead of the connective tissue graft, free gingival graft, or in the process such as the loose coverage. Okay, when we understand what is a process and what is a biology of the bone graft, let's move to the case presentation. First case is a preservation that I use the cerebone with the collagen. In this case, the tooth number 1, they have the root resorption. You can see from the cone beam CT have the small dark line here. Let's see in the number 2 this implant is wash place before the patient see me. You can see because the implant is too thick and they don't have the bone support. They have the small fistula, and that is always have the discharge on and off, on and off. That's because of this implant, it doesn't have the bone tissue, the hard tissue, the bone support enough. That's why in number 1 when the patient need the implant, let's try to do the socket preservation first. This one I extract a tooth 1 with a traumatic technique, and then I graft in the socket with the Xenograft. In this case, I use the cerebone and cover that with the Jansen fleet, collagen, and then suture it. After that, I use the shell crown to reline and do the provisional crown for the patient. This is a pontic. We connect to the adjacent teeth with the resin bond. After 2 weeks, the patient come back and we remove the provisional. You can see because of property of the collagen is resolved by 2 weeks, but however, the soft tissue is growth in and try to cover on this area. That is normal. Don't worry, after you do socket preservation, and after 2 weeks, you can see this phenomenon. That is normal. And then we do the new provisional for the patient. Because of the time of healing of the cerebone, the xenograft, this case, we wait for the 7 months to make sure that the bone graft completely integrate with the bone patient. In this case, I do the cone beam CT again to check thickness of the bone. You can see this outline. The Xenograft work is very well. They keep the volume of the socket and they keep the space for the implant placement. You can see the defect right now is have the soft tissue growth on it. And you can see the thickness is very well. When I open the flap, you can see they have the integrate with the bone patient. We have the thickness like a 6-7 millimeter. That's enough for the regular platform implant. That is osteotomy. After the osteotomy, this is very important. If you can see the blood come from the osteotomy, that is very good sign. It means the tissue and the bone graft is integrated together. They have the blood supply. This is a very good sign. If you drill it and have no bleeding from the area, that's get more concerned about the regeneration of the bone in that area. And this one, I place the implant in, put the socket, put the healing abutment, the X-ray after, and then we do the final prosthesis in this patient. You can see because of lack of the bone support, in the number 2 one is always have the pus come on and off. We offer an option for the patient to remove it, regenerate the bone and place a new implant, but the patient deny the treatment option. After 2 years, you can see the soft tissue and the hard tissue on number 1 and number 2 one is a little bit different. The tissue contour and everything is look very good and the patient satisfied for treatment. We do the CBCT for the make sure. You can see number 2 one, that's use the big implant and no bone cover. In the CBCTs have no bone cover on the buccal bone anymore. But for our treatment, we do the socket preservation with the Xenograft. You can see the line, the white line like this. It's kind of like the bone remodeling on the implant, and the thickness we have like a 2 millimeter, followed to the spray paper. This is mean the long-term outcome is very good. And this number 1 is it doesn't have any infection or pus like a number 2 one. Okay, the second case. This is one that is a severe horizontal defect. I do the GBR with the orthogenous and the Xenograft also. This case I use like a Dr. Homle Wang sandwich technique. I use the first layer. It could be orthogenous or the Allograft, and then another layer is a Xenograft, and then cover with the membrane to exclude the soft tissue. This is a patient present with this clinical picture. It's look very good. The thickness is look very well, but the history patient get the car accident and lost 3 front teeth here. I did the cone beam CT, and you can see from the 3D reconstructor, the picture reconstruct have the severe bone loss because she lost the buccal plate and the tooth in the same time. Even in the oral cavity, it look very good. In general, for the aesthetic area, we need to do the cone beam CT to make sure that we have the bone foundation before the implant surgery. That's it. In every cut, you can see in the some have the severe bone loss, just have like a paper thin 0.3 millimeter. In some area is good, but however, in this case, we have to do the stage approach, do the GBR first, and then do the implant later on. Okay, You can see, as I mentioned before, I do the wide flap base. I extend my incision line one tooth beyond the defect, both sides, you see. Okay, and we can see the severe bone loss such as we seen in the cone beam CT. Remember the past technique. I do the cortication first, and then I do the periosteum releasing, and to make sure we can get the tension-free primary closure. In this case, I decide to use the block graft from the ramus. Patient has a wisdom tooth number 4A. I remove it in the same time and I harvest the ramus block graft. That is enough for those areas. But however, because the block is not meshed on the defect, I have to cut bone in the pieces and then fix that in the area. But however, they have this some gap between the adjacent tooth and between the bone graft itself. I use the Xenograft for the fill the gap. One purpose is fill the gap, and the second one is to be the volume stability. And I cover that with the pericardium collagen membrane. And then they have some defect left. I use the core protect because this area we don't need a barrier effect, more like in the middle. That's why I use the Jason on the middle and the core protect in the both sides. And after that, do the tension-free closure. After this case, it's a 9-month. Patient come back, I run the cone beam CT again. You can see the defect before and after. The after we can fill the gap. We can regenerate the bone over all around that defect. That's a 3D picture before and after. Okay, let's do the implant surgery. The soft tissue and everything is very well, no dehiscence, no any complication. I open up the gum and what I see the Xenograft cover on the block graft. I have to use the curette to remove some the particle on the screw. That's after I open the flap, then remove the screw. Because of the bone is very good and not have a space for the prosthesis. That's why I have to use the rubber to do the alloplasty to get the prosthesis space. After I reduce the bone, you can see from the probe, we get like a 8 to 9 millimeter in the both area. Then we do the I did the implant as the protocol. This picture show you can see the bleeding that is inside of the bone graft. It means it's a living. They have the blood supply on it. And then we place the 2 implants to do the bridge between 1-2 and 2-1. Another area that I like to point for the audience, you can see this. They have the small vessel run on the autogenous bone graft. That is mean they integrate to the recipient size is very well. That is the occlusal view. You can see we have the bone support on the buccal side, probably like a 3 millimeter. This is plenty for the long-term aesthetic outcome. That's the post-op X-ray. Okay, time almost run out. I have 10 minutes more. This one is the last case. It's a horizontal defect in the single space. This case, because the defect horizontal defect is not much, and that is very small. That's why I use just an allograft and the cerebral mixed together. The patient lost a tooth number 1 for the 6 months, and then she present with this clinical picture. It look very well. Is the in the oral cavity is look very thick. It seemed like to have enough bone support. But however, I run the even in the panoramic view, it look very good. But I do the cone beam CT. You can see from the cone beam CT, the bone is gone. They have just 3 to 5 millimeter in the some area. That's not enough for the bone support. That's why I plan to do the GBR first and then do the implant later on. After I open the flap design, one teeth, one tooth, both sides, the flap here and here. You can see it's the same with the cone beam CT. It's lost the volume here, but this one is a very good. It's predictable defect because it's container defect. It's kind of like a cup. It can hold the bone graft, the volume, and you have the property regeneration from the bone all around here. This is a defect. In this case, because I mentioned you before, the defect is not big, and the regeneration is very fast. That's why I use the Protect for barrier membrane, and then I use the Graft in the first layer. Or I forgot to mention, do the decortication first with the Graft, and then Celebone on top, and I cover the membrane on top of the bone graft. In this case, I don't use any titanium tack because the membrane is very stable. I cut it a little bit longer than defect. It can cover like a blanket. It's not on cover on the graft is very well. And do the free tension primary closure. And then same with the other case, I waiting to 6 to 8 months. In this case, 7 months. It look very good. It's no dehiscence. The patient wear the flipper. I run the cone beam CT again. You can see from the 3D picture, they have the bone graft cover on defect. When we measure, they have like a 5-6 millimeter. That is very enough for the implant placement. Open the flap. I compare the defect before and the after bone graft. You can see the some granule of Xenograft. That's normal. Don't worry, you just scrape on the bone graft side and the flap also. Just remove it and rinse that. And after, when you get the solid, start to do the surgery after you remove all of the particle on the surface. This is compare between the after membrane. We get like around 90-80%. That's enough for the implant. The width that we get like a 6 millimeter. Okay. Do osteotomy. Check the angulation, and then same. The bleeding come from osteotomy is a good sign. You can see the residue of the soft tissue and the degradation of the membrane. I not remove it. I leave it in place. The implant in very good stability. That's the insertion torque more than 35 Newton centimeter. We did the provisional trial, and because of get the some bone from the drill, I augmented for the buckle more. And then I manipulate the soft tissue because the flap is left. I do the de-epithelize and the flip that and the suture on the buccal side to thicken up the soft tissue. And then check the provisional without any contact in any direction. That's after surgery. Then the 2 week, the remodeling is not completely yet. Compared to the after the surgery, you can see the soft tissue is growing follow the provisional graft. Before and after, you can see it's thickened up. After 3 months, when compared to the after the surgery. After that, when the tissue contour, we do the final prosthesis, all the front teeth reconstruction. After remove the provisional, you can see is keep the soft tissue profile is very well. And then the prosthesis. This is X-ray after prosthesis restoration. Before and after. This patient come back at 2 years. I run the cone beam CT again. You can see if we use the right biomaterial, it can thicken up the hard tissue here. They have the more than 2 millimeter. That's why the soft tissue, this is a 2 years follow-up. The soft tissue is very stable. The bone is very stable. And the prosthesis is very well. It's have some chipping, but the patient don't worry about that. It's a 2 year follow-up. Okay, that's all for my presentation. And my presentation is on the webinar. You can see that again. And they have the education on the botiss academy. You can see the variety of the material and the clinical situation that you can get more information about that and the case presentation more in the botiss academy. Okay, any question? Okay, from Anas, thank you for your question. What's our indication for the MAC resolve? Actually, it's can working well for my own experience. I use that if the patient reject Xenograft, reject the Allograft, I use the synthetic instead of it. Or in the some area that you need the volume stability, such as the sinus augmentation, this is a good option also to use the MAC resolve. Okay, I think it's no more any question. Thank you very much for join our program, and hope you get some idea and get some clinical indication to apply to your practice. Thank you very much from Bangkok, Thailand.